Welcome to today's episode of The Square. I am really excited to be here with Ludo Michaud, who's my partner in crime at the MediaLab. He is the VFX creative director, so that means you kind of take care of all the stuff that looks really cool when it comes to the video.
Yeah, I make the image look pretty.
Yeah, I work with you to come up with the ideas, and then you cash all the checks in order to make it look good.
You make stuff up, I make it look real.
So I think one of the things that people might find interesting is, of the 20 of us that are in the Media Lab, only 2 have an architecture background.
Absolutely.
Everybody else has kind of more of an industry-specific background.
Well, I think it speaks to the original idea about a dozen years ago of wanting to bring that cinematic storytelling to the architectural world. And this is where you and I came in, is to bring that, I call it the analog and the digital part of the whole thing together. I think it was a great idea. I think it helps tells the story.
And I think traditionally there have been architects that have gone into VFX, but we're really doing the opposite of that. And it feels like it gives us an advantage when you're bringing people that have some, we've got people that have worked at ILM and Disney and these industry places that have a very high standard, and we're bringing that to architectural storytelling. It feels like it gives you kind of a step up.
Absolutely. I think we do bring a lot of good things to the world. It's a world that's very structured, and everything we bring is not strange to it. They're not strange to that world.
Yeah.
However, they don't know all the parts and intricacy. There's a lot more pieces they can't even think about. So this is what we bring, is to bring all that knowledge and say, hey, here's all the things you can do to get to point B.
Yeah. Well, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about how the architectural visual effects worlds meet. We're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to break down some videos and just talk about some of the future with AI and VR, that kind of thing. But to get kicked off, tell me a little bit, or share with people a little bit about your history, because you have a pretty cool history.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I'm going to go fast. In 10th grade, I wanted to be an architect, funny enough. I was doing technical drawings back then. I was doing models already, and that goes a long time ago. But then I didn't want to do so many. It was too structured for me. It was too physics based. I couldn't do a sphere and just put it in the middle of nowhere. So 3D, I moved to motion graphic, funny enough, because I thought it was more artistic. Make a long story short, 3D, I saw Jurassic Park and Terminator 2, Abyss, The Abyss, all these movies which have great VFX in them, and there was not a lot of people doing that stuff at the time, so it was a great opportunity to just say, hey, why not, right?
Yeah.
So from there, I went to school for this. There was not a lot of... There was
not a lot of options.
It was a school that self-taught yourself to get to point B. But and then I started. So my career started around 20 at Softimage, Microsoft at the time, where I built the software. Yeah, rest in peace. Not Microsoft, but Softimage. But it allowed me to understand how the whole process works, right? It was about the pipelines. It was about structures, about how to make things fast, efficient, scalable, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
So within that period of time, I ended up being lucky enough to travel around the world for 3 years to help bring Softimage to the world, the new version of Softimage to the world.
And just for people that may not know, Softimage was a combination of things, of tools, right? It was the rendering engine, it was a 3D package, animation,
effects, particle effects, and stuff.
Yeah, okay, gotcha.
So it was the first 3D package out there for that stuff. And the last 3 years, I traveled around. I had the chance to meet a lot of people, the industry in general. It was a lot of fun. I got to work at Phil Tippett Studios for a couple of weeks. It was just amazing to work and meet all these impressive people that somehow went through the same route as I did, but it started a little earlier than I did, right? About 10 years before me. So I got the chance to grab a lot of information. So from there, I moved to Texas to move into production. So I work on Spy Kids series 2 and 3
with old Robert Rodriguez.
Yep. He's old now, right?
He's older than us.
That's great. I get where you put it. I worked on. I had the chance to put my hands on some movies like Wolverine: The Origin, the one with the bone claws.
Yeah.
Green Lantern. Effects are not the
okay. I'm one of those people that I actually really still like Green Lantern, and I know that's not popular.
Sure, this is not a popular vote right there. But anyway, Night in Museum 2. I
Yeah.
did some help with some tracking and some shots and stuff like that. I did a bunch of Christian movies, the movie scene. I did a couple of horror movies, B movies. One of them is Mr. Hell. I'm going to say it because apparently there's a cult out there for that movie.
There's a cult following of Mr. Hell by itself.
So I got surprised by that. Luke was there when it happened. It was very funny. And I did a lot of commercial. I mean, commercial.
Yeah.
It was a big bread and butter back in in those days.
Yeah.
Getting into ILM was not an easy feat. You had to know somebody somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, so go along these years, end up going around doing some stuff, freelance. I worked at Real Effects for a while. Worked on Despicable Me, the ride at Orlando and Universal Studios in LA.
So a lot of different VFX background and creating things digitally.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's one of my first kind of things for us to talk about, which is there's coming from a more kind of a live action world where you're trying to capture everything in camera, whether it's, literally everything from doing short films and features to something where you're doing corporate videos or marketing things. Whatever you're capturing in camera is what you've got. You're really coming at it. It's great because once you've captured it, it's then editable and you can put it out. You have kind of the barrier of entry is there's a lot more lift at the beginning in terms of creating something. It's not as easy as just saying action and then you're done. There's a lot more to it, but you also have a much broader base of things that you can do in terms of the imagination is the limit.
Yes, imagination is the limit. Really, I remember this line on the script for one of the first Transformers. It says, "And then Optimus Prime and Megatron get into a fight." That was it. That was the line on the page.
That was a 30-second scene, one line.
No, it was a 10-minute scene.
Oh, 10-minute scene.
It took a year and a half to get that shot, and it was just a one line. I was like, yeah, it's as simple as and the imagination goes there. I think. And imagination is based on what you're trying to do, because I think there's, in my personal feeling of this, there's like 3 categories of VFX. There's a supporting VFX, the one that helps make the story even stronger.
Kind of augments
the story, but they're not the story, right?
Right.
And then there's the one that are the story. Transformer would be a very good example where the effects are the story more than anything else, because all you see is a bunch of robots fighting the whole time.
Sure.
Which we all know doesn't exist.
Right. Although you've just crushed my 6-year-old's heart, but go ahead.
Yeah. and the other one is the invisible effects. I worked on this movie that called I can't remember. I'm sorry. One of the actor won a Best Actor a few years back, like 15 years ago.
Okay.
And funny enough, I worked on the movie that brought him that Oscar, but yet what's interesting, if you see it, you wouldn't be able to tell that there's any effect in that movie.
So that's like line removal and things like that?
It's changing background to be like, they shot everything in Chicago, but it was turned out it was supposed to be in New York, so we had to change street signs. We had to put the bridges in the background.
Yeah.
So, it's a lot of it. There was like 150 shot in there, but, you don't see
it's the kind of VFX where if anybody actually did notice it, you didn't do a good job.
Exactly. So there's, 3 schools on that one, and I prefer the one that the invisible and the supporting one.
Well, that's probably good, because it feels like that's a lot of what you do now. Like when we are doing storytelling, and one of the things that's a really easy comparison is when we are taking these buildings, which often for people that may not have an architecture background, when you're doing, hundreds of million or billion-dollar projects, client tends to want to see what it's going to look like when it's done. And so we're out there filming the live action plates, handing them off to Ludo. Ludo and his team are taking the building with as much detail and realism as you can manage,
most of the time,
and putting it in the scene. And really, when you've achieved the highest level of what you're doing, people can't tell the difference, right?
Yeah, very often the client comes in and is like, is this built already?
Yeah, where is this?
So that means that we've done our job, right? That really means we've done our job if we can convince them that the building already exists when it doesn't exist, right? It's interesting. Again, in the architectural world, there's a lot of different type of move or visualization they want to see, right? And yes, the photographic one is one of the popular one where we
Yeah.
go and shoot the site and we put the building in there. Again, we make the client think the building exists. There's a phasing one, which is a more cartoony, but it helps understand the phasing, inform the client of it. So there's not really a story other than the information that comes with it, right?
So in your storytelling experience, you're trying to get people to suspend disbelief and you know, kind of immerse themselves in the story.
Yeah,
There's a parallel to that when you're trying to get people to think about how a building's going to be when it's done.
absolutely. I want them to feel like the building, how take Elevate Burr. If you look at the new
Which
airport,
we'll look at in a few minutes. You'll
in a
get to
few
see
minutes.
it.
If you look at the piece, it's about showing the people what's to come, right? It's for them to understand why it's going to be majestic or it's going to be impressive to have this new airport. It makes sense to upgrade the old one to the new one and just make it, you know, it keeps all the details of the old ones, and it's really about just keeping that story there and make sure that people feel immersed when they look at the piece. They feel like they can go there today. You want them to feel there. They want, because that's how they feel better, more closer to the piece or
Yeah.
closer to the architecture itself, the design, the ideas and stuff. If it looks like, you know, just a piece like this, they dismiss it. They don't really care because they don't feel like they could go there. It looks fake, and they just move on. So those ideas don't get, and I'm sure those are great ideas. Sometimes it's just not transposed properly.
So we talked a little bit about how they're similar in terms of, you know, kind of traditional storytelling and architectural storytelling. What are some of the significant challenges you have in architectural storytelling, and are they similar to traditional?
No, we can cut that off if you guys want to, but my answer was going to be the architect.
I didn't say it. Let me give you Ludo's email for all comments.
I'm kidding. It's in reality, when you really dive into that statement, there's validity to it, which is it's understanding the design or understanding the idea, the concept that the architect wants to transpose. It's always, that's probably the hardest part, is to really put myself in their shoes to understand why they came up with this and really help them
Understand the why.
understand the why and push that why to the client.
Yeah.
Make sure the user sees what they see. Because I mean, I can make design all day long, but if nobody understands the design, nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right. So I really want to make sure that that's probably the hardest part, is really connecting the two to make sure the why it gets out. Because I think I sincerely believe that if people they look at an image, they look at a video,
Yeah.
if they don't feel like they could be there, they don't attach themselves to the project. They don't connect to it.
Right.
They don't get there. Right.
Okay. Are there, I want to walk through a couple of breakdowns, and we can
Yeah.
kind of take them one at a time. I think the first one we're going to look at is Mission Impossible. So this is the latest Mission Impossible. Just to be clear, neither Ludo or I worked on this film, but specifically, Ludo has done some work that's very similar to a representative here. It just happened to be what we could pull. And hopefully it's something that a lot of people have seen. So we don't get to explode many things.
Yeah.
We still want to.
It's
been 12 years and we haven't gotten the chance, but we're going to. But there's a lot of augmentation that's happening. Now, obviously, they got to, you know, actually run a train off of the mountain cliff there, so there was a lot that they had to work with in order to augment.
So as you can see here, right about there, pause. So everything you're about to see here, we do as well, just not with the explosion. But for instance, the rig. We have to remove the rig on a lot of the effects that we do. Sometimes the truck is right in the middle of the shot, or there's a bunch of construction happening, and we got to remove that so the site looks like it's clean by default. And then we have to extend the set. So if you can press play now again. And right about now, there you go, remove. And there's a second section that happened here in the back, because there's no, you know, right there, you see it right there, set extension gets added. And a lot of details get added because in our case, again, relate the two. In our case, what we do is we clean the site, we change the site, we put the building in there, and the explosion, really at the end of the day, if it's a phasing or anything, it's just not as aggressive as an explosion would be. But this is all the same thing. Now, where it's interesting for us is depending on the time frame that we have.
Yeah.
We don't use always the same technique to get to point B.
Well, and we don't have the same number of artists and the
Yes,
same
exactly.
render farm.
Yeah.
But the concept is the same.
It's literally the same.
Yeah. So keep rolling through this, because one of the other things that I liked about the clips that we picked, and in fact, I'm going to give a shout out to since we're looking behind the scenes of VFX, you'll get a chance to look behind the scenes to our guys in the studio where Adam, Luke, and Colt are. They make all of this happen. And but moving forward to 252, Colt. So what I like about this part of the clip is you are seeing a lot of that same set extension we were talking about, but basically they take a warehouse where they have, these people. And then I love the part with Simon Pegg in the airport, because we do a ton of airport work, and baggage systems are one of the things that are the most complex for us to do, because it's such a heavy 3D file to bring in, because there's so much intricacy to it. So roll back a little bit for me, Colt, and go back to where we have the shot of him in the baggage claim area. A little bit further. Yeah, right in there. You can play it from right there, and then get ready to pause it. So pause it right there. It's again, really good VFX, you don't notice, but if I watch these and I find myself, as I'm sure you do constantly when we're watching movies, is that VFX or is that real? And if I'm asking that question, chances are it was really good VFX.
Yeah.
Because really bad VFX, when it's VFX.
It's funny, after doing this for over 30 years now, I think what I do is when I see a bad effect, that's when I disconnect from the movie.
Yeah.
But usually if I don't worry about the effects, they're doing a good job.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much effects are like shot like this. Nobody understands the intricacy that goes behind a shot like
And
this.
the complexity, for sure, yeah.
And they don't see it, which is great. That's the whole point of being invisible, right? But you'd be surprised when you say there's 3,500 shot effects in a movie. These shots are included in there.
Yeah.
They're part of this. And this is 18 layers to get to point B.
So let's look at Rebel Moon real quick. And I'll give the guys a chance to pull that up for a minute. And we're just going to kind of play through it a little bit. But there are, what are some of the challenges in terms of that idea of having a really light touch where it's not something that's seen? We'll pull through here. So pause right here, if you would, please, Colt. In something like this where you're having to create, we're not using any live plates, and you're creating everything from digital. At least when you have a live plate, you kind of have something to compare it to know what your gauge is. On something like this, it's easy for it to have that digital feel, and yet you want kind of that uncanny valley where it's just perfect enough to trick you, but not perfect enough to be too perfect.
Our worst enemy is the mind.
Right.
The mind knows that this doesn't exist. So by default, it goes into the scene thinking it's not real. So crossing that edge of uncanny valley is so hard, because you have to get into that world, because your enemy right there is saying, the brain saying, I will not believe it no matter what you do, right?
So tell people, just in case they may not know what uncanny valley is, it's kind of a theory. Tell them.
Yeah, it's a theory where you believe what you see. Everything that you see is real at this point. There's no way you can say that it's not real anymore.
Right. Okay.
And if you look at a very good example movie here, if you look at Chappie, you should see that movie.
Yeah.
If you watch that movie, the robot in there has crossed that valley. That robot the whole time is CG the whole time, but you can't tell. It's not real.
Yeah.
But you can't tell that it's not real.
So close.
He's interacting so well with everybody, and the actor that did the character,
right,
did so well. Everybody acted so well with the character, and the integration, the touching, the contact. I mean, it's so well done that you're like, where does it stop? Where does it start?
Yeah.
If you can't tell where the VFX starts and where it ends, this is where you start crossing that line of the uncanny valley.
So with something like this where it's all CG, what is that? That's a added challenge?
It is an extremely added challenge. The other enemy you have is memory.
Mm.
People think they know what things looks like. So a lot of time you fight them thinking that they no, I know it looks like this. I remember an old project we did that everyone was saying, no, the ditch is 6 foot deep, and like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
It's a foot and a half. The software is saying that. I saw the foot, but they're like, no, it's 6 feet. And then at the end they go back, like, oh, it was a foot and a half, you know.
Yeah.
But their memory. But the problem you have in that case is that you're fighting with the client or the user or the architect, whatever.
Right.
To say, look, I'm trying to give you the right thing, but your memory is saying otherwise, right? And it's really hard to. This is another enemy to the VFX at the end of the day, to help them get to the point B of what they're looking at.
So play a little bit more of this, if you will, Colt. I am kind of curious, when you sit down, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, when you sit down and on a page, you know, it says something along the lines of, you know, we see, you know, this character ride down the elevator, and, you know, you have the narrative on the page. Where does that stop and the VFX begin? Like, how does that process work to get from one to the other?
Well, it doesn't show entirely all that stuff. It shows you the result right now. It shows you the green screen and where it gets,
Right.
and where the real and the fake is, and so on and so forth. But it starts with the paper, right?
Right.
Somebody says there's a fight with a spider creature, and there's blade with fire, right?
Right.
And that's what's written on paper. That's great, awesome. So then there's a crew that sits down and says, how the heck are we going to do this?
Yeah. A lot of alcohol is consumed.
Yeah. But what's cool about this is the process, which we call the pre-production at that point, where we sit down and we analyze, okay, well, we could do it all in camera if we wanted to, or is it possible?
Yeah.
Where does it, well, the spider character is not real. There's no way I can get a 3,000-pound spider to show up on the set and do something. Okay. Obviously, the spider is CG, right? But then at that point, it's like, okay, we want as much flexibility when she fights, so we don't want to constrain the people to an environment, so we're going to open the scene and say, fight in this room, and we'll figure out how things go around there.
Right.
You know, it's all these little details that helps you to get there.
Right.
And that little, funny, can you go back? It's a very interesting shot right there. The one where the character gets pulled off by the rig, whatever it is. When we did a commercial for Bo Pilgrim, the wings, the Texas wings, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
We had to figure out how to take an 85-year-old man and make him jump off of a plane. That was the line. And he had to go save the chicken, whatever. He had to go get the chicken, whatever he was supposed to do. And we had to figure out a way. So we sat down for a few days, like, how do we get it to work? So we're like, well, we can't obviously make an 85-year-old jump off of a plane. Obviously, it would take a lot of people to get around, all the cameras and all that stuff. So this is where it starts disseminating to that detail that you're looking for, where we ended up with the CEO of the company in between two rods. And he was all rigged up, so we had to paint all the rigs out. But he was all rigged up, and all we did is make him go like this with the rig. The rig was just
like say like a fall forward.
Fall forward thing. Expand your arms. You're not gonna fall. Everything's gonna be okay. There was a big mattress there in case something went wrong.
Yeah.
And at that point, from there, we went and created the camera move. We went and added the plane in the back and all the shaping and all that stuff painted out. So, but we had to work on figuring out how we were going to make him jump, because we did talk about, well, what if we make him jump, right? But again, go back to, no offense to 85, the fact that he was 85 at the time, he was 85. So making somebody jump off even a 2 feet platform,
Apple box or
something is not the safest thing you can do, right? So really, at the end, the point I'm trying to make here is that the scene shows up, and then we have to sit down and figure out how we're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of time you guys not a lot of time, but sometimes you guys show over the footage. We didn't think about it first, and now we have to sit down and figure out how to react to that footage, right?
Yeah.
So, which again brings back that not the same technique is used every time.
Well, and I've got to imagine, I'm thinking of the project we did for Hugo 99 initiative. Like, even with all the planning and green screening and prepping, we get into the shots and we're like, oh man, like we maybe should have shot that one differently, or it's not even necessarily a lack of communication. It's just the actual reality of doing it with what we thought how it was going to work just don't always match up. And so you have to adjust. Is there, when we talked a little bit about communication, and I think it's so key, because in a narrative storytelling project, you have the director who is communicating with whoever the VFX, director or soup is, and then they work with the team to bring to life whatever the vision is. In our case here at the Media Lab, it's often somebody on the Corgan side coming to work with me or with you on, hey, here's what we need, and then you kind of bringing it to life. But there's a third element, which is the client, which is, I guess you could kind of compare them to the audience a little bit.
Yeah.
But you're having to kind of make sure all three of those line up with a clear vision. That communication seems like, especially with that added element of making sure the client's able to clearly understand it, makes it a little difficult.
Absolutely. I think there's a part where you can say, here's my story. Yeah, but I can't visualize it. Or here's the effect. You're like, but why?
Yeah.
Like, so you have to really marry the two to get to the point where here's the story and how it's going to happen, and then make sure that all the stakeholders understand what's happening.
Are there things that you do to kind of over communicate or mitigate potentially people misunderstanding what the story is going to be or what it's going to look like?
I think I tend to over communicate at the beginning of the process to make sure that people understand how it's going to happen, because imagination is the limit. If they've never seen it, it's hard for them to comprehend the third enemy. If
Right.
they've never seen it, they don't know how it's going to look like.
Right.
So when you say, "Oh, I'm going to do this and this," like, that's scary. I don't know what you do. What are you talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, so you have to over communicate at that point to make sure they understand. And sometimes it forces us to do what we call pre-visualization,
Yeah.
which is just a quick, like, here, this is what. And even then, that sometimes that's dangerous, because they're like, "Is it going to look like this?" No, it's not going to look like this.
It's not gonna look like the wireframe. It's
Yeah,
okay. We're not.
it's
You're gonna get more than a play blast,
Yeah.
and all the VFX people know exactly what that is.
Yeah. But yeah, so over communication happens in the process, not so much in the story. If the story is well told, I think everything lines up.
Yeah.
Right? If the phasing is well told, which phasing is a very interesting system that I've never had to deal with before.
Yeah. There's not
Where-
really
where-
an entertainment version.
No,
of phasing.
the phasing, and
Yeah.
and sometimes you're like, they're talking about, you really have to put that fence there. You're like, but why? I don't care about the fence. It's not helping the building.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the fence tells about 3 other crew what's going to happen and where they're going to be able to work or not work, whatever, right? So it's very interesting how to dive into the logistic of, engineering, the construction, the architecture, design. So there's so many phases that we have to worry about. Stages.
Yeah.
Let's face it, I don't want to mix it too earlier. But there's so many stages that we have to worry about, which one is the idea, architecture, the construction, how it's going to be done, and then the engineer behind it, and
So I'm gonna make a statement and see if you agree with me.
I want to see that.
I would say that the best client is often the client that comes and knows what they don't know. Meaning, I'll give you a great example. We will often have somebody, and hopefully I don't insult anyone, that comes, hey, we want to fly through, that goes from this spot, and it's one camera, and it goes through this entire airport over 10 minutes and ends here. And it's like, listen, what you want and what you need may be two different things.
Absolutely.
And so being able to say, hey, listen, those cuts that we make, that's going to make it way more interesting. And we're going to give a path, but it's not going to be the exact path you would walk, because it'll be more interesting to show off these pieces of the design or whatever the case
Whatever
may
it
be.
is, yes. You really want to understand the client, the viewer,
Mhm.
your final person watching this. You need to make sure they understand where they're at.
Right.
Walking through the whole path helps, but it doesn't really put them in context. It's just, hey, somebody put me on a fast 10 miles per hour
Scooter.
and or 50 miles per hour
Yeah.
scooter, and go.
Not to mention nobody's going to sit there for 10 minutes to watch it.
Yeah. So I think you're right. I think your statement is true. I think I would they have to trust us that we are trying to do our best to put their idea out there as well. We
Their
understand
story,
that the story starts from here and ends here. Now, it might not exactly go the way you want it, but it's going to get there, and all the right message will be shown. So knowing that what they don't know helps a lot, because then they show a lot more trust.
So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, we've talked a lot about the moving image, so video and animation and live action. How does this, how many renders did you guys do last year? 'Cause that's one of the things I don't interact with.
It's all right. It's always around 500 to 600, but the firm does a lot more than that.
But how does how you think about VFX and something that's 24 images a second change when you're coming to 5 images total?
That's a very good question. I like that, because the way you bring it up is very nice. So let's stop for a second. Let's go back and start with the image. What's important about an image is it's one image.
Mm-hmm.
And the expression, an image is worth 1,000 words. You have to appreciate that line so deeply, because it's about when they see the image for the first time, how did they feel? And then if they feel good, they're gonna start digging into the detail. If they like the
Right.
detail, then you're gonna say, "Well, I wanna be here," right? So that's your image. That's the only way you can impress somebody. So when they open the page and they open to it, they have to be their brain has to be the endorphin has to kick in and say, "Ooh, what is that?" Right?
Yeah.
You have to have that moment. The nice thing about so put the still aside. Now go to the movie. The nice thing about the movie is you have the time to tell them to get there.
Yeah.
They, to an extent, they don't have the choice to look at the
Look at a render.
the
Yeah.
full minute. They don't have the choice.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
The,
got
the
you.
full minute, they have to look at the full minute.
Right.
So you have a lot of opportunity to do that. Who, mama, like moment, like when you start the airport, it's like, yeah, I know where the ticketing is. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Move on. And I'm kind of exaggerating.
Yeah.
But then you go, oh, this is the main hall. Oh yeah, this is gonna be, and then suddenly you start the details, start showing more plays, and the camera moves around. Like, oh, I can see this. Oh, I can't wait to be there. It's gonna be such a better experience to be in this airport than that airport, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But you see, again, you have the opportunity to tell that story, right? The story is and they have the chance to look. They have to look at that minute piece or 2 minute piece versus a still. If they're not, they don't do that. They just go.
They move on very quickly.
Very, very quickly, and then at the point you're like, well, all the hard work just went to trash. You know?
So what do you think the biggest misconception about the ArcViz process is?
That it's easy.
Really, that it's easy.
Yeah, a lot of people is like, oh, you just do this and this. I'm sorry, guys. I don't want to disappoint anybody.
So you're saying you do your job too well because it looks so easy.
Yeah, sure. You can go that route if you want to. In all honesty, it's not just an image for me. There is a passion behind it that says, "Hey, what's your why? What's your design? How can I make people drool over it?" Right?
Mhm.
And drooling is exaggeration again, but how do I get people to be wanting more of that concept? How do I want them? So, to me, it's not just slap some stuff together, put 4 walls in the image. It's not about the 4 walls. It's about the how you film the space. Sure, you want to talk about there's going to be a big door for 2 people to come through. There's going to be a desk in the back. There's going to be whatever is happening. You want to express all this, but at the same time, you can do a plan that says all this. As long as they understand that they want to be in that space, I think that the selling point is, do I want to be in this space regardless of what's in it?
How, and I can already think of a few answers to this, but I'm curious what the first one is that comes to mind for you. Give me an example or a story when an architectural animation or a rendering has influenced the decision-making process when it comes to the design or the programming of a project.
Man, there's so many in so many different ways. I've got a few right now. We did this render for this airport a long time ago, and there were our specs,
Hmm.
and the architect was just doing that as a gift. And it turns out that when when the client saw they were like, "Oh my God, is this going to look that good? I want more now." So suddenly
Yeah.
the current went bigger. A lot of people a lot of people that look at phasing is like, "No, that makes sense now."
Yeah.
Once they see it, they're like, on paper it's great. You tell me this is gonna happen, but until I see
Yeah.
it, they don't get it.
You know, I hadn't even thought about the phasing side of it, but you're right. That because it's in many ways the building is like a good VFX. There's so much complexity that goes into it. When they actually get to see the phasing of how things are going to plan out, it changes how things are going to happen because they've been able to anticipate a problem long before it happens.
Exactly. Or actually, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, at least it's really predict what could happen if they do
Yeah.
that or not, and understand the situation better. It's one thing to say on the paper, well, this is the route we're going to take, and it's another thing to see what happens to that route when you take it that way. You're like, oh, hold on, we can't cut this off.
Yeah.
You know, so suddenly it changes the plan and stuff like that. I don't have any direct example except for a couple here and there
Yeah.
like this, but I think it's really
I think one that stands out, and it was because our storytelling covers live action, VFX, VR, AR, all of that. I think the one at John Wayne Airport stands out to me.
oh yeah, that's,
Where-
yeah, but that's a VR example.
Yeah, where they were again, same idea, digital representation of what the design was going to be, and John Higgs was there, and they had spent like 2 hours discussing where to put this one pole that had signage on it, and they popped into VR, and within like 5 minutes, made the decision.
Yeah, which funny. This is where I'm saying it's not as easy as it sounds and people were scared of that because I remember that VR experience was just to show them off what we can do,
Yeah.
our capability of what we can do with VR and other things and technology. It was not to make a decision about it, but originally it should have been probably that
Yeah.
the whole time. It's like, hey, instead of wasting time, let's just take 5 minutes in here, go in there, tell me where the pole fix, and
Yeah.
then you're set, right? I think this is the unknown that comes in. It's like, well, I don't know what VR is. I don't know if it's gonna take it or not. Whatever. I think you gotta take chances and be a little more adventurous.
So if you could change something about the industry, what would it be? I have mine, but I want to hear yours first.
You know, I, it's a deep question. There's so many things I would like to change, but the biggest thing I'd like to change is the misconception that everything is easy. Honestly, that's my biggest thing.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you can do that in Unreal now. Okay, but there's more to that Unreal moment than just that one thing that you did. And I'm not saying Unreal is anything. I love Unreal, so
Yeah.
it's not anything against Unreal. But it's a lot of time people overreact on or react super quick on something without thinking of all the other I have to think about what happens tomorrow when suddenly somebody says, "Well, you did it yesterday with a still. You can do it on a moving camera now, right?"
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
and if I could change that misconception that it's not, we make it appear easy. It's my job to make it easy. It's our job to make it as straightforward as possible. However, the easy part I'm talking about is that it's not just an image.
Yeah.
Stop thinking it's just an image. It's not just a fly through. You're trying to communicate what you, as a team of architects that have been designing and working for 6 months on this thing, we're trying to tell people in 2 minutes what that 6 months felt like and why you got to that point,
Yeah.
where you got there. So if you can appreciate that part, that it's not just an image, it's not just a minute fly through, then suddenly it takes a different perspective.
I think so. Very similar to yours, because I think that's a really good point. Mine's probably, so that's kind of focused on the client side. Mine's probably the the other side of the same coin for the industry side, which is people. There is such an opportunity when creating images or an animation or a VFX to spend the extra 10% to make it something special. And I think, particularly with real-time engines and whatnot, there's the opportunity to do something really fast that's just not great. And there's such a huge amount of renders and animations that just are not that good. Like, they really kind of shoot yourself in the foot as an industry when you put out things that are just not good. And if you could take the 10% or the 15% extra, and listen, I get it. We finished, I don't even know how many hundreds, I think it was 300 and some odd projects last year, and traveled 100 days last year and put out hundreds of renders. Like, I get there's a lot of work and there's a lot of demands on time, but if we can, as an industry, move towards a quality versus quantity, I think the communication of things would go up, and we'd end up saving time with our clients because they would understand better. But also there'd be an increased level of pride in the work.
Absolutely.
And speaking of pride of the work, I thought we'd wrap up with our I'll say one of, not our favorite, but one of our favorite projects.
All our projects are favorite.
Yeah, exactly. I'll go first because it's one that we worked on together, and was very much a partnership on this one, and that was the Toyota Unveil video. And so Toyota, Corgan had won the architecture contract for building the new North American Toyota headquarters when they moved from California to Texas. And we, as the MediaLab, were able to partner with the Toyota marketing team to do a lot of internal communication and change management. But that included creating a campaign for their employees to encourage them to move to Texas with the company. So there was a VR headset, and there was a series of videos. But the big one that showed at the groundbreaking, the unveiling was this animation. The concept of that was they were unveiling the building in the same way that we might unveil a car. Yeah. And so we even had the drape over the building. Exactly, in the press release. And so you start off by showing these kind of really micro view shots of the stairs and
Dry
where the
pond.
dry pond's going to be, and then the oculus, which was a kind of a defining feature. And then the first big shot you see is this huge crane shot coming out, starting on a automobile, and then continuing to just slowly reveal different defining design features of the building in these real kind of dramatic ways. And then I love that drive up shot. You continue just to see different kind of shots of the design, and then you finish coming back to that oculus in the background, which was this is the entrance of the building, um, and wrapping it up. I just there was such a cool mood that came out of it. It was very rarely do we get to kind of take an animation and just do like as much as we want to do.
To me, it was about the design. It was not about the building.
Yeah.
I mean, we revealed part of the building. We never really show the building as a fly through or anything like that. We really just show peace in the air. We show how it's going to feel when you drive to work. We show, that drive shot. That was what I was.
There was that
trying to get
employee
there,
kind of feel to it with that car drive up shot.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was about how proud are you going to be of that building?
Yeah.
Look at this. It's going to be amazing to be proud of this, right? So, and then you have that reveal of the whole side, but really at the end, it's just showing you the.
It's pretty impressive. Not to interrupt you, it's pretty impressive. I just looked at that aerial shot, how close that is to what actually came.
Oh yeah.
Because usually,
absolutely.
despite best intentions, things happen where the site changes and different things. That was pretty close to the way it is in real life.
Yeah,
So
because I think now it's a wet creek too. It's not a dry creek.
Yeah, exactly. Well, especially recently with the rain. So what's your project?
Well, that was my project, but then I didn't have the choice. No, Burbank. I think Burbank is the latest thing, and I'll tell you what I like the most about Burbank is that was the opportunity where the client knew what they didn't know and they trusted something that we've done for them before. And not only that, but we use so many techniques around that piece. Integration.
So for this one, it's live plates and the animation.
Integration.
Yeah.
And then we go to full CG. There's graphic in there. Everything is in there to make this piece really consistent and really allow people to understand, hey, it's the same space, guys. It's the same cool airport, but it's the same cool feeling. And when you come in, this is what you're going to see. And really, there was a lot of, again, it was about the design, not so much about we do somehow we're flying through the whole airport, but as we fly, we're talking about the design more than the actual space itself. And I think this is where, to me, it was very powerful to just say, like, we don't show you coming, we cross the door, but nobody's going to come in that way, right?
We're not following a single person or character throughout
we
this.
just tried to show you, look how cool the space, it's going to be big. And we all know, a lot of us know Burbank. It's a very crammed space. It's a beautiful, historic building. However, it's very cramped. It's very small. Does this sustain the kind of amount of people that we have now that used to be in that airport versus what used to go to that airport? So.
I'll point two things out about this. Colt, if you can go back to like 10 or 15 seconds into it, it's the second aerial shot. Before we get to that, I was going to tell you the thing that I liked about this is people may not know Burbank actually was presented with 3 different concepts.
Yeah.
And we inevitably have our kind of favorite concept that the architects have done. 99% of the time, that's not the one that gets picked because it's usually like the most expensive or the most involved or complex. In this case, it was the one that they picked, and it's a kind of an homage to old Hollywood. You can stop it right there, Colt. It was kind of an homage to old Hollywood and was something that was just, I don't know. I think it's going to be a really amazing airport to fly in and out.
I think so too.
So to give you an idea, I don't know, Colt, if you can there we go, put it on the big screen. You already there. So to give you an idea of some of the complexity of this, because we were talking about it earlier. Obviously, the airport and whatnot is CG. The buildings right here are real. The trucks, some of the trucks are CG.
Yeah,
so you're crossing some of that stuff there. Yeah. Even little subtle things like, for example, in real life, these buildings that have the two red squares in the back, those are way brighter in reality. And it was one of those things when we were going through and doing this piece, it kept drawing your eye. So we just simply tracked them. I say you tracked them, muted them. It's that touch-up stuff that people will never know that you did that really help focus your attention on what's important.
What's important, exactly.
So anyway, well, Ludo, this has been a fascinating conversation. I'm excited that we got to kind of talk about something that you and I get to do day in and day out.
Yes.
I want to leave with what you think is coming in the industry, kind of future looking. I know AI is already for us in just a year. It has changed a huge of how we work in terms of using it as a tool to expedite things as well as ideate and iterate things. What do you see coming?
So many things. The best way I can describe it is if you guys remember the Star Trek, um, not Voyager, but the one with Picard.
I'm really a Star Wars guy, but go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a Star Wars guy. But in Star Trek, they have that room where the room changes.
Oh yeah,
I can't remember
the holodeck.
the holodeck. Yes,
Yeah,
it's not tomorrow by all means. But don't panic, anybody. But it is. This is what I see. Everything we're building right now is to build that holodeck. It's to create that holodeck moment where your imagination says, "I want to be in an old bar and I want to have cowboys around me." Press play, and you walk in the room. The whole set is
yeah,
there for you. And this is AI is going to help a lot of that because that's why AI is going to say, "Well, what's a Western bar and the cowboys? What does it look like? And what kind of personality you have?" So I'm going to put the right characters in there, whatever, right? I think AI is going to help support these things. I don't see AI taking. Yes, it will take jobs, but the job will be replaced by more job that AI needs somebody to support AI, right?
right.
It's going to create more jobs, just like any moment in history that we had when the trucks came in. The farmers thought they were all gone of machine. They were all gone of jobs. There's still a lot of farmers out there in the world right now, so I want to. Kudos to
Sure.
all these guys. They're doing great work. Now somebody had to build those tractors, so it created new jobs, right? So there's always a. It's not pretty when it happens, but it does fix itself.
Yeah.
I think the real time is a big. This is the big moment for real time to make. Because real time's been out there for like 50, 60 years.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember seeing videos from the 50s. They're showing you real
Well,
time
I mean,
stuff.
it's basically been since the first Doom came out.
Yeah,
That's real time.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
real time.
essentially,
It's not.
it's just gotten prettier.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And funny enough, at the time, if we had more time, we probably could have made it
Yeah.
prettier. But now I think it's a great chance for real time to become the next step in the next evolution on animation renderings.
That really excites me too because I think it's going to open up more tools for the creatives too. I don't, we have a kind of a unique workflow and we've been working with our creatives to be able to set cameras, which has traditionally been a VFX job. It's not changing how what it changes is how the creatives are able to think through their stories and communicate them. It doesn't replace anybody. It allows them, the VFX artist, then to focus on how to detail out the buildings or how to make things that are additive to the story. And so I think just like you said with AI, as things shift, I think it'll give the creatives and storytellers the ability to work with the VFX artist and their creativity and storytelling to create a better product overall and a better story overall.
Very good example is those truck that we added at the
Mhm.
Amazon building. That Amazon building was empty. There was nothing there in that lot, and it drew attention too
Right.
much because you had that fully activated place, and then you had that thing
This
over there. It
blank
was like
area.
blank area. I'm
Yeah.
like, your eye was like, why is it empty?
Yeah.
That's what your brain was saying. So the point of this is that we had so much time. It went so quick, much quicker to track the thing, put the thing in. We have a process that helps us go faster there. It allowed us to say, you know what, let's fix this. 5 years ago, I don't know we would have had the time to fix it.
Because it would have been something you just didn't have
We would have seen it, but like
bandwidth.
we don't have time to figure out or have the bandwidth exactly. So I think this is cool. It's AI is helping us a lot right now at the lab. Tremendously helping us, and not in creating images for us, but fixing images or expanding images. The best example I have is marketing comes to us like, "Hey, we have this image that's supposed to be 16 by 9 for the website, but it's square. So what do we do with this?" We're like, "Well, we can't just." Do this,
Yeah.
but then we went and when AI was like, "Hey, you know what? Add those pixels, makes it 16 by 9." We had to paint a little bit on it,
Yeah.
by all means, but they did 90% of the work. AI did 90% of the work, which helped us return that image back in 3 hours instead of opening the job
How
and
much ever,
re-rendering
yeah.
everything and so on and so forth. I would have taken a lot more people and time for that.
Well, Ludo, thank you so much for being here and for having this conversation. Thank you for listening. We'll definitely put links to some of the breakdowns that we did, as well as our favorite videos. Shameless plug. down in the description. And make sure you join us next time for The Square.
Thank you.